The mysterious arrival. The space station Epsilon 9 was one of the busiest hubs in the galaxy. Ships from different worlds arrived and departed every hour. The air smelled of metal, fuel, and spices from 100 different planets. Merchants shouted about rare goods, bounty hunters scanned the crowds for fugitives, and alien diplomats discussed politics in hushed voices. Among the chaos, Ethan Carter, a human engineer, worked quietly. He was just another worker in this massive floating city, fixing ships and minding his own business. Life here was tough, but it was simple. He had no interest in the fights of the powerful, the secrets of the rich, or the schemes of the warlords. All he wanted was to do his job and survive. But today, everything changed. The portal appears. A loud hum echoed across the station, making people stop in their tracks. In the center of the market, a bright blue light appeared out of nowhere. It twisted and shimmered like liquid glass. The temperature dropped, and a cold wind rushed through the air. People stepped back, whispering in fear. Then, from the center of the light, a figure stepped out. She was tall and slender, with golden skin that shimmered under the station lights. Her hair was pure silver, falling like silk over her shoulders. But the most striking thing about her were her eyes, glowing violet, deep and mysterious. She wore a flowing cloak, her expression calm but distant, as if she had come from a place far beyond anyone's understanding. For a moment, the entire station fell silent. Desire and greed. The moment she stepped forward, a ripple of energy spread through the air. It was not visible, but every alien, warlord, and noble felt it. A whisper ran through the crowd. Who is she? What is that power I feel? She is not ordinary. Then the silence broke into chaos. A rich noble, draped in silk and gold, stepped forward. I will take her, he declared, tossing a bag of glowing credits to the ground. Name your price. A huge armored warlord pushed past him, his cybernetic eye glowing red. No, she belongs to me. Step aside, or I will take her by force. More voices rose in greed and hunger. Alien kings, merchants, bounty hunters, and spies all fought to claim her. They all wanted her. They didn't know who she was, but they could feel her importance. She was something rare, something powerful. And yet, the girl stood there, untouched by the chaos. Her glowing violet eyes scanned the crowd. She was looking for something. No, someone. Then her gaze stopped. She was looking at Ethan. The choice. Ethan felt his heart skip a beat. He had been standing at the back, watching everything unfold. He wasn't rich. He wasn't powerful. He was just a human engineer, a nobody in the grand scheme of things. And yet, she was looking right at him. Before he could react, the girl raised her hand and pointed directly at him. I choose him. The entire station froze. Every noble, warlord, and criminal turned their heads to look at Ethan. The tension in the air became heavy, dangerous. The rich noble's face twisted in anger. You're joking. That human, he is nothing. The armored warlord growled, stepping forward. Girl, you don't understand. You don't get to choose. You are a prize, and prizes belong to the strongest. But the girl did not move. Her violet eyes never left Ethan. She had made her decision. Ethan swallowed hard. He had no idea what was happening, but one thing was clear. He was in trouble. The chase begins. A group of armed guards appeared, pushing through the crowd. Their leader, a sharp-eyed alien in a black uniform, raised his voice. The girl is under station control. Nobody moves. But nobody listened. The noble and the warlord both stepped forward, drawing their weapons. The bounty hunters, mercenaries, and criminals tensed, ready to fight. The entire market was on the verge of war. Then the girl suddenly turned to Ethan. Run, she whispered. Ethan's heart pounded. He had no idea who she was. He had no idea why she had chosen him. But as he saw the greed and hunger in the eyes of those around him, he knew one thing. If he stayed, he would die. So he did the only thing that made sense. He grabbed her hand and ran. The chase begins. The alarm screamed through the space station. Red lights flashed, and security drones soared through the air like hunting birds. The marketplace, once buzzing with trade, had turned into a battlefield of desperate voices and drawn weapons. Ethan didn't have time to think. He ran. The alien girl's hand was cold in his grasp, but her grip was firm. She ran beside him, her silver hair flowing behind her like a comet's tail, the weight of 100 angry eyes pressed against their backs. Behind them, the chaos erupted. "Stop them!" Someone roared. A blaster shot whizzed past Ethan's head, searing the air. The bounty hunters moved first, their instincts razor-sharp. Mercenaries and warlords lunged forward, each one desperate to claim the girl. Some fought among themselves, but others were already giving chase. Ethan had no idea who she was, but one thing was certain: she was worth a fortune. No escape. "Left," the girl shouted. Ethan didn't question it. He turned sharply into a narrow alley between two towering trade buildings. Steam hissed from broken pipes, and the ground was slick with oil. The air was thick with the metallic scent of rust and fuel. He stumbled but kept running. The footsteps behind them were getting closer. A security drone swooped overhead, scanning the area with a blinding blue light. BEEP. TAR GT Lockheed. Pursued ENJ. A streak of laser fire sliced through the alley, barely missing Ethan's shoulder. He flinched, his mind screaming at him to stop, to hide, to surrender. But something in the girl's eyes made him push forward. She wasn't afraid. She had chosen him, and for some reason, that meant she trusted him. "Who are you?" They burst out of the alley onto a floating walkway that stretched high above the lower levels of the station. Ethan could see hundreds of ships docked below, blinking with neon lights. If they could just reach one. A metal gate slammed shut in front of them. Ethan skidded to a stop, chest heaving. Trapped. Behind them, their pursuers were closing in. Bounty hunters, station guards, and that monstrous warlord from before, his red cybernetic eye glowing with rage. The girl turned to Ethan, her violet eyes intense. "Do you trust me?" she asked. Ethan blinked. "What? I don't even know you." She didn't answer. Instead, she raised her hand and placed it against the metal gate. A soft golden glow spread from her fingers. Ethan's breath caught. The steel began to melt, not with fire, but with pure energy, like the metal itself had decided to dissolve. The gate shattered into dust. The leap of fate. "Move," she shouted, grabbing Ethan's wrist and pulling him forward. They ran onto a loading platform, wind howling around them. Below, a transport ship was taking off, its engines flaring bright blue. The girl didn't stop running. Ethan realized what she was about to do. His stomach dropped. Wait, no UAIT. She jumped. Ethan cursed and jumped after her. For a brief moment, they were weightless, falling through open air, the roar of the engines beneath them deafening. Then, impact. They landed hard on the hull of the transport ship, Ethan rolling to keep from breaking something. He groaned. His entire body ached. "That was the dumbest thing I've ever done." The girl smirked. "You're still alive, aren't you?" A moment of silence. The ship lifted off, leaving the chaos of Epsilon 9 behind. Ethan pushed himself up and looked at the girl. She was watching the stars, her expression unreadable. Who was she? Before he could ask, she turned to him. "I am Silara." Her voice was calm, but there was something underneath it, something heavy. Ethan exhaled. "And what exactly did I just get myself into?" Silara's gaze darkened. "They will never stop hunting me." Ethan stared at her. The reality of what had just happened finally sank in. He had been an ordinary engineer just an hour ago. Now he was a fugitive, running from some of the most dangerous people in the galaxy. And the worst part, he had no idea why. The hidden power. The void of space stretched endlessly, cold and silent, as the stolen transport ship drifted between the stars. Inside, the tension between Ethan and Solara was anything but quiet. Ethan rubbed his sore shoulder, still feeling the impact of their insane jump onto the ship. His heart had finally stopped trying to escape his chest, but his brain still raced. He had spent his life fixing ships, not stealing them. He had never been hunted, never been chased, and certainly never met a mysterious alien girl who could melt steel with her bare hands. And now, he was stuck in space with her. You have questions. Solara sat near the ship's control panel, watching the stars. Her silver hair glowed faintly under the dim cockpit lights, and her violet eyes reflected the galaxy like they held secrets too ancient to name. Ethan exhaled sharply. You think? Solara tilted her head. You helped me escape. That means you are part of this now. Ethan let out a bitter laugh. Oh, great. I love being chased by bounty hunters and space warlords for reasons I don't understand. He leaned forward. So tell me, what exactly did I just risk my life for? The truth, or part of it. Solara's fingers traced the control panel, her touch impossibly gentle. The ship hummed under her fingertips, as if responding to her presence. I am important, she admitted, but not in the way they believe. Ethan crossed his arms. Try again. That's not an answer. She hesitated, then finally met his gaze. I was created. Ethan blinked. Created. Solara nodded. Not born. Created. Engineered by the Eldari. Ethan had heard that name before. The Eldari. A race so ancient that most believed they were just myths. They had vanished thousands of years ago, leaving behind only ruined cities and mysterious technology. He narrowed his eyes. That's impossible. The Eldari are extinct. Solara's lips pressed together. Yes, but I am the last thing they left behind. Ethan's breath hitched. The last Eldari creation. Suddenly, everything made sense. That strange energy ripple when she arrived. The way the warlords, the bounty hunters, and the nobles had reacted. They all felt something. Something ancient. Something powerful. Okay, Ethan said slowly. So if they think you're Eldari, that makes you, what? A weapon? Solara's jaw tightened. No, I am not a weapon. I was never meant to be one. Her voice was firm, but Ethan wasn't sure if she believed it herself. The ship isn't empty. Before he could press further, a loud thud echoed through the hull. Ethan and Solara both froze. Something was on the ship. Ethan's stomach twisted. Please tell me that's just turbulence. Solara slowly stood. It is not. Another thud, then another. Footsteps. Ethan's hand went to his belt, but he didn't even carry a weapon. What was he supposed to do? Throw a wrench at them? Solara moved toward the door, but Ethan grabbed her arm. Wait, you don't even know who it is. Solara gave him a calm look. I do. Before he could stop her, she waved her hand over the control panel. The door slid open. A tall, shadowed figure stood on the other side. An unwelcome guest. The intruder stepped forward, and the dim cockpit lights illuminated his face. Ethan's stomach dropped. He recognized him. Varric Kor, a bounty hunter, and not just any bounty hunter, one of the best. His face was scared. His cybernetic arm gleamed under the light, and his one remaining human eye locked onto Solara like a predator watching prey. Solara didn't flinch. You're fast, she said simply. Varric smirked. You're predictable. Ethan glanced at Solara. Predictable. That was the last word he would have used for her. Varric stepped forward, blocking the exit. You already know how this goes, princess. You come with me. Nobody gets hurt. The warlords pay me, and I retire rich. Easy deal. Solara didn't move. No. Varric sighed, shaking his head. I was hoping you'd say that. The hidden power. Unleashed. He lunged. His cybernetic hand shot forward, too fast for Ethan to react. The metal fingers wrapped around Solara's throat, lifting her off the ground. Ethan moved, but Varric was stronger, faster. Solara gasped, but then everything changed. A pulse of golden energy exploded from her body. Varric's cybernetic arm cracked, sparks flying from its joints. His single human eye widened in shock as he was thrown backward, crashing into the metal walls. Ethan stumbled, shielding his eyes. The entire ship hummed with energy, like the metal itself was alive. Solara's feet slowly touched the ground. Her violet eyes burned with golden light. Her hands glowed, the air around her humming with power. Varric coughed, pushing himself up. His metal arm was ruined. He looked at Solara, truly afraid for the first time. "You don't even know what you are, do you?" he muttered. Solara didn't answer. Varric shook his head and stumbled toward the exit. "You can run all you want, but there's nowhere in this galaxy you can hide." He disappeared into the shadows. Aftermath. The ship fell into silence. The golden energy faded from Solara's body. She swayed slightly, looking exhausted. Ethan caught her before she could collapse. "Okay. Yeah, definitely not normal." Solara exhaled shakily. "I told you. They will never stop hunting me." Ethan sighed. He was in deep. And somehow he already knew this was only the beginning. Secrets of the past. The stolen ship drifted through the silent void of space, far from any known trade routes. The battle with Varric Core had left the ship damaged, and Solara had not spoken since. She sat in the co-pilot's chair, staring at the galaxy outside the window, her silver hair reflecting the dim glow of the cockpit lights. Ethan watched her carefully. She looked tired, but there was something else, something deeper. She wasn't just exhausted, she was lost in a memory. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, Ethan realized something. Solara wasn't just running from bounty hunters, she was running from something inside her, an unexpected destination. The navigation system blinked red, warning of an approaching planet. Ethan checked the readings. Kevalus 7, he muttered. A dead planet. No colonies, no life signs, just ruins. Solara's head snapped toward him. "That's where we're going." Ethan frowned. "Are you serious? The planet is listed as uninhabitable. Why would we?" "I need to go there," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "That planet is where the truth begins." Ethan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Every survival instinct told him this was a bad idea. But at this point, he was already in too deep. He pulled the controls and angled the ship toward the planet. The forgotten world. The ship broke through the dense, gray atmosphere, and the surface of Kevalus 7 came into view. The land below was a wasteland of broken towers, half buried under dust and time. The remains of an ancient civilization. Ethan swallowed. He had heard rumors about places like this, worlds that once belonged to the Eldari. He glanced at Solara. Her hands were clenched into fists. She knew this place. As they landed, the ship's sensors flickered strangely. Ethan frowned. "There's some kind of interference here." Solara nodded. "It's because of what lies beneath." Beneath? Before Ethan could ask, Solara stood and headed for the exit. "Wait," he called after her. "At least take a weapon." Solara didn't even turn around. "Weapons won't matter here." That was not comforting. Whispers in the ruins. The moment Ethan stepped onto the ground, a strange pressure filled the air. The ruins felt alive. The wind howled through broken stone, but it almost sounded like whispers, like voices from the past, murmuring secrets too old for time. Ethan shivered. "I hate this place." Solara walked ahead, her violet eyes scanning the ruins with an expression somewhere between awe and grief. Ethan followed her cautiously. Everything was too quiet. Then Solara suddenly stopped. Ethan nearly bumped into her. "What is it?" She turned to him. This place was once called Avaris. It was the last city of the Eldari before they vanished. Ethan frowned. And you know this. How? Solara exhaled slowly. Because I have been here before. Ethan's blood ran cold. Before. That was impossible. This place had been abandoned for thousands of years. The vault of the Eldari. Before he could question her, Solara stepped forward and pressed her hand against a stone wall. A soft, golden light spread from her fingertips. The ground rumbled. Ethan stumbled back as the ancient stone moved on its own, revealing a dark staircase leading deep underground. Solara turned to him. This is why I came here. Ethan stared at the gaping entrance. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to leave. Instead, he groaned. I already know I'm going to regret this. Then, against his better judgment, he followed her inside. The truth awakens. The deeper they went, the colder it became. The air was thick, not with dust, but with energy. Something ancient. Something waiting. Then they reached it. A massive chamber, bathed in golden light. At the center stood an obelisk of black stone, covered in glowing Eldari symbols. Ethan felt dizzy just looking at it. The air around it vibrated like reality itself was warping. Solara stepped forward, her hands shaking. This is what they fear. Ethan looked at her. What do you mean? She placed her hand on the obelisk. The symbols pulsed, filling the room with a low humming sound. Then, a deep voice echoed through the chamber. You have returned. Ethan's breath caught. The voice was not coming from a speaker. It was coming from inside Solara's mind. The warning. The golden light flashed. Images *** flooded Solara's mind. *** a war. A terrible war fought across the stars. The Eldari, once the greatest power in the universe, were falling. And in their desperation, they created her. Not just as a being. As a key. The obelisk's voice whispered in her mind. You were meant to awaken us. To finish what was left undone. Solara gasped, stumbling back. No, I wasn't. Ethan caught her before she fell. Solara, what's happening? She clutched her head, her voice trembling. The Eldari, they didn't die. They sealed themselves away. Ethan's eyes widened. Wait, you're telling me. They're still out there, Solara whispered, waiting for me to bring them back. The past should stay buried. The chamber suddenly shook violently. The obelisk's glow intensified. It is time. The galaxy will kneel once more. Solara screamed. The power surged through her, too much, too fast. Ethan didn't think. He grabbed her hand and pulled her away. Whatever this is, we are not waking it up. They ran. Behind them, the golden symbols flared brighter, the ancient whispers turning into a roar. The ruins began to collapse. They barely made it back to the surface before the entrance caved in behind them. Aftermath. Solara fell to her knees, gasping for breath. Ethan crouched beside her. She looked at him, her violet eyes filled with fear. They wanted me to finish their war. Ethan clenched his jaw. And do you want that? Solara hesitated. Then she shook her head. No. Ethan exhaled. Good. Then let's make sure no one else ever finds this place. Solara looked at the ruins one last time. Then she stood. Ethan sighed. So, what now? Solara's eyes darkened. They will come for me. And now, they will come for you too. Ethan groaned. Great, just what I wanted. As they climbed back into their ship, the stars stretched before them, more dangerous than ever. Because now, Ethan knew the truth. And the truth was terrifying. The betrayal. The ship floated in the dark void of space, the ruins of Kevalis 7 disappearing behind them like a fading nightmare. Ethan sat in the cockpit, still trying to process everything. His fingers drummed against the metal console, his mind racing. They had found the truth, or at least, a piece of it. Solara wasn't just a fugitive. She was a key to something ancient, something powerful, something that should have remained buried. And now, They weren't just running from bounty hunters. They were running from the ghosts of a lost empire, a fragile alliance. The ship's power levels were dropping fast. Their stolen vessel had taken a beating from the fight with Varric Core, and landing on Kevalis 7 hadn't helped. They needed supplies, fuel, and repairs. Fast. Silara sat in the co-pilot's chair, silent, staring at the vast ocean of stars beyond the glass. Her silver hair shimmered under the dim lights, but there was something off about her. She looked distant. Ethan frowned. "You've been quiet since we left that ruin." Silara blinked, as if coming back to reality. "I'm fine." Ethan exhaled. "You just found out you're a walking key to an extinct empire, and you're fine." She didn't answer. Ethan sighed. There was no point in pushing her. Instead, he focused on their next problem. A dangerous pit stop. They had no choice but to land on Kerosphore, a fringe world known for two things: black market deals and double crosses. Ethan had been here before. He knew what kind of people operated in the shadows of this world. It was a place where loyalty was bought and sold like cargo. The only reason they were here was because of an old contact of his, a man named Dakar. A former smuggler turned businessman. Dakar was the kind of person who would shake your hand while checking your pockets for valuables. Ethan didn't trust him. But right now, he didn't have a choice. A friendly welcome, or not. They landed in a hidden docking bay, deep inside Kerosphore's underbelly. The air smelled of oil, sweat, and bad decisions. Dakar was waiting for them. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with cybernetic implants running down one side of his face. He grinned when he saw Ethan. "Carter, it's been too long. Still getting yourself into trouble?" Ethan smirked. "You know me. Trouble finds me." Dakar chuckled. His gaze flickered to Silara. "Interesting company you're keeping," he mused. "She's different." Ethan felt Silara stiffen beside him. Dakar tilted his head. "Something tells me there's a big price on her head." Ethan's jaw clenched. "We need repairs." "No questions asked." Dakar smiled. "Of course, old friend. Anything for you." The trap. The repairs took hours. Ethan kept a close eye on the crew, but everything seemed normal. Dakar's people worked fast, replacing damaged parts, refueling the ship. Silara stayed inside, barely speaking. Ethan didn't blame her. She had too many ghosts in her head. By the time the work was done, Ethan almost let himself relax. That was a mistake. As he stepped into the loading bay to check on the final adjustments, the door behind him slammed shut. A cold realization hit him. He had just walked into a trap. The betrayal. Dakar's voice echoed through the bay's intercom. "Sorry, Carter, but a price like hers, it's too high to ignore." Ethan spun around, fists clenched. Dakar stepped forward, flanked by 6 armed mercenaries. Ethan's stomach twisted. "You sold us out." Dakar shrugged. "Nothing personal. The warlords are paying a fortune for her. You of all people should understand. Business is business." Ethan's blood boiled. He should have known. He did know. But he had hoped, stupidly, that Dakar wouldn't turn on him. And now he was unarmed and outnumbered. Silara's decision. Then the ground rumbled. A sudden pulse of golden light exploded from the ship's entrance. Dakar and his men staggered backward. Silara stepped into the loading bay, her violet eyes glowing like burning stars. Ethan had seen her use her power before. But this time, she wasn't holding back. Dakar's face twisted in fear. "Oh hell." Silara lifted her hand. The air crackled. The metal around them bent, twisted. Dakar panicked. "Wait. Maybe we can." Too late. A wave of energy erupted from Silara's body, sending Dakar and his mercenaries flying. Sparks burst from the walls as control panels overloaded. The entire dock shook violently. Ethan shielded his face, barely able to breathe in the intensity of it. Then, silence. Dakar was unconscious. His men were scattered on the floor, unmoving. Silara stood there, her chest rising and falling rapidly, her hands still glowing. She had chosen not to kill them. Ethan swallowed hard. He had no idea if that had been mercy or control. A message to the galaxy. As the alarms blared through the docking bay, Ethan grabbed Silara's wrist. "We need to go. Now." She didn't resist. They ran back into the ship, the engines already humming with power. As the ship lifted off, Ethan looked at her. "You didn't kill them." Silara stared at her hands. "I wanted to." Ethan exhaled. "But you didn't." She turned her glowing violet eyes to them. "That's the problem, Ethan." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know how much longer I can hold back." The final confrontation. The stolen ship rocketed through space, engines burning at full power. Behind them, the betrayal on Kairos 4 was already fading into the void, but the consequences still chased them like a shadow. Ethan sat in the pilot's seat, gripping the controls so tight his knuckles turned white. "We're not safe," Silara said softly beside him. Ethan let out a bitter laugh. "That's an understatement." Her violet eyes flickered toward the navigation screen. "They're coming." Ethan's stomach dropped. She was right. A massive warship had appeared on the scanner. Not just any warship. It was the fleet of Lord Veros, the most ruthless warlord in the galaxy. And he wasn't here to negotiate. No escape this time. The radio crackled to life. A deep, commanding voice filled the cockpit. "You have nowhere left to run. Surrender the girl, and you will be spared." Ethan gritted his teeth. Lies. They wouldn't spare him. They wouldn't spare anyone. Silara's hands trembled, not with fear, but with something else. Something dangerous. Ethan could feel it, an energy building inside her, raw and untamed. "We can't fight them," he said. "We have to." Silara stood up. Ethan felt his pulse spike. "Wait. What are you doing?" She didn't answer. She just walked toward the ship's airlock. Ethan cursed, slamming the autopilot and running after her. The doors hissed open. Beyond them, through the shimmering force field, the warship loomed like a metallic god of death. Silara closed her eyes. And then she stepped into the void. The power unleashed. Ethan's heart stopped. She was floating in space, without a suit, without protection. And yet, she did not die. Instead, the stars themselves seemed to bend around her. The warship fired. A full plasma barrage. Enough firepower to obliterate a city. Ethan braced for impact. But Silara raised her hand, and the energy froze mid-space. Not deflected, not absorbed. Frozen. The plasma crackled, twisting in the air, fighting against an unseen force. And then, Silara sent it back. The impossible happens. The warship shuddered violently as its own weapons turned against it. Explosions ripped through its hull. Fire and debris tore into the void. Ethan watched in horror. She wasn't fighting. She was erasing them. Silara's violet eyes burned with golden fire. Her voice echoed across the empty space. "You will not take me." The warship began to break apart. The choice. Ethan scrambled to the controls. "Silara, stop." Her gaze snapped to him. And for the first time, he saw it. The thing she had been fighting. Not just the warlords. Not just the bounty hunters. Herself. The power inside her was alive. It was pulling her in, consuming her. If she didn't stop now, she never would. Ethan grabbed the comms. "Silara, I know you can hear me." The flames around her flickered. He swallowed hard. "This isn't you." The ship groaned, tearing apart at its core. Silara's body trembled. "They will never stop hunting me," she whispered. Ethan clenched his jaw. "Then let's stop running. Together." Silence. And then, the energy vanished. The warship floated in ruins, burning but still intact. Solara collapsed. Ethan lunged forward, grabbing her before she drifted away into the void. As he pulled her back inside the ship, she was shaking. Not from exhaustion, from fear. Aftermath. Ethan laid her down gently. She didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "I almost lost myself." Ethan exhaled. "But you didn't." Solara turned to him. "Not yet." Ethan stared at her, his mind racing. She had barely controlled it this time. What happened the next time she lost control? And worse, what if she didn't want to stop? As their ship drifted toward an unknown future, one thing was clear. The final battle was coming. And Ethan didn't know if Solara would survive it. The choice and the new beginning. The ship drifted in silent space, its metal frame barely holding together after the battle. The ruins of the warlord's fleet burned in the distance, the last remnants of the hunt that had chased them across the galaxy. But inside the cockpit, Ethan wasn't celebrating. He was watching Solara. She sat by the window, staring at the void beyond, her silver hair hanging loosely over her face. Her violet eyes, once filled with fear and mystery, now held something even more dangerous. Indecision. The power she had unleashed against Lord Vero's fleet had terrified even her. Now she had to decide what came next, and Ethan had never been more afraid. The offer. A beacon flashed on the control panel. A transmission. Ethan hesitated before answering. The holographic screen flickered, and a familiar face filled the air. Lord Veros, alive. His face was burned, his cybernetic implants sparking from the damage Solara had caused. His once proud warship was nothing but a floating wreck, yet somehow he was still smiling. "Congratulations," he said, his voice strained. "You've proven yourself, girl. The galaxy will never stop hunting you." Solara didn't react. Veros leaned forward, his damaged eye glowing red. "But I see it now," he continued. "You don't need to run anymore." Ethan's stomach tightened. He already knew what was coming. "Join me," Veros said. "No more hiding. No more fear. Take your place as a ruler of the stars. No one will challenge you." The air felt heavy. Solara's hands clenched into fists. Ethan saw it. The temptation. She could end this chase forever. No more running. No more warlords, bounty hunters, or assassins. If she took his offer, she wouldn't have to fear anyone. Because they would fear her. Ethan's plea. Ethan stood up. "Solara," he said softly, "you don't have to do this." She turned to him, her face unreadable. "If I don't, they'll never stop." Ethan shook his head. "So what? You're going to become what they fear. Rule over them." Solara didn't answer. She didn't need to. Ethan took a deep breath. "I know what it feels like to be powerless, to be hunted, to want revenge." He took a step closer. "But I also know you," he said. "You saved me. You chose me. And not because I was strong, or powerful, or special." He searched her eyes. "You chose me because I was human." Solara's breath caught. "You're not a weapon, Solara," Ethan whispered. "You never were." Her glowing hands dimmed. Her fingers loosened. She turned back to the hologram of Veros. And in a quiet, steady voice, she spoke. "I choose my own path." Then she closed her hand into a fist and crushed the transmission into static. The war ends. The moment the signal cut, Ethan let out a shaky breath. Solara stood there, motionless. The energy around her had faded, leaving only a girl who had defied fate. Then, for the first time in what felt like forever, she smiled. A small, tired, genuine smile. Ethan smirked. "So, what now?" Solara glanced at the endless stars. "Anywhere but here," she said. Ethan nodded. "Sounds good to me." He fired up the engines. The ship roared to life, and as they blasted away, leaving the broken past behind, Ethan realized something. For the first time in his life, He wasn't just surviving. He was living. And beside him, so was she.